Here.
Hi everyone, I'm Chef Dee, instructor here at the Culinary Arts Department with the Norfolk campus. I wanted to go over a few things about the sourdough bread. Now that you've seen some pictures and the recipe, I want to talk about the care of your bread for after baking and then before when you want to bake. After your bread comes out of the oven, let it sit and cool for just a couple of minutes and then remove it from the pan that you baked it on and place it on a cooling rack if you have one. Before you slice it, let it cool for a good 20 to 30 minutes. That way you give it a chance to rest and the texture gets nice and firm. Then when you slice it, you want to use a serrated knife. And you want to do a sewing motion on your bread to give you a nice, even slice. Isn't that beautiful? Now, after your bread has baked and you want to store it, don't wrap it in plastic film because that's going to soften the nice crusty texture that you've achieved with baking. You can use foil, you can use wax paper, or you can put it in a bag. I like to use foil. I wrap it up and it freezes wonderfully. Now let's talk about your starter. Now, as you know, your starter is a living creature and it needs feeding and caring. In between baking, keep it under refrigeration. And it needs to be fed, or you need to bake with it, at least once a week. So when you're ready to feed it or you're ready to bake with it, pull it out of the refrigerator about 12 hours before you want to bake. So I'll pull mine out the night before I want to bake. Now if you notice that at the top of your starter there's a gray liquid, that's called the hooch. You can just pour that off and then take a wooden spoon, and I do prefer to use a wooden spoon when I'm working with my dough and my starter, especially one that has a hole in the center. It helps the starter flow from side to side. So I take my starter out, pour off the hooch if it's there, and then I'm going to measure out 1.5 cups of live starter. Look at that, isn't that beautiful? Now to this starter that I'm going to bake bread with, I'm going to add 1 cup of bread flour, and you want to use bread flour. It's higher in gluten, makes a better bread, makes a better feeding for your starter as well. And you're also going to put in 1 cup of water. Just tap water is fine. You don't want it too hot, you don't want it too cold. Then I'm going to stir up my starter, mix it really well. A few lumps is fine. Okay. Then I'm going to cover it with a clean, dry cloth and let it sit out on the counter for 12 hours. So the next day when I get up, my starter will be ready for me to bake bread. Now to my remaining starter, so I can keep my quantities up, this also needs to be fed. So I'm going to add to this starter also 1 cup of bread flour and 1 cup of water. Again, I'm going to stir it up, dissolve most of the big lumps. Then I'm going to let this sit on the counter for a half hour to an hour at room temperature and let it warm up a little bit. After it's come to room temperature, I'm going to cover it with some plastic wrap and I'm going to put it back in my refrigerator until I'm ready to bake again, and just repeat the whole cycle all over again. This is one of the best starters I think I've ever worked with. I want to thank the science department for creating it. It makes a wonderful bread, and it truly shows the science and the art of food. Thank you so much.